Climate change, by definition, is a change in global or regional climate patterns. Earth over the years has experienced a rise in temperature by 1.2 to 1.4 Fahrenheit. Earth is taking a major hit, or by this change, this is causing our wildlife to die off, our atmosphere is starting to deteriorate, and soon enough, Earth will not be able to sustain life as we know it. For years, humans have been reliant on the use of fossil fuels. Some examples of the fossil fuels that we use are oil, coal, and natural gases. Some of the uses that we have created for these resources are fuel to heat our homes, fuel for our transportation, and for the machinery that provides us with these fossil fuels. So, how does this work? Well, in order to get our fossil fuels from the store, there obviously has to be a source where we get them from. And that source is from the ground. So, what happens is we clear cut a spot in the forest, which creates a lot of negative issues for our wildlife, but we'll get to that later. We clear cut the forest, and the machines at hand go to work digging up the ground, trying to collect all the oil that they can that these large oil companies need. So once they get the oil and they bring it to the factories that make the oil or like the resources able to be sold to the public, they leave the job site, but with the negative effect that this has on the wildlife, it takes away the wildlife's homes, their source of protection from prey, and even some of their food sources. So, this is why we are trying to make awareness. Why are these big companies cutting down our forests and digging up all this oil, etc.? Money. The answer is money. Because obviously we will buy it from them to help run our daily needs. So not only are the wildlife in the forest being impacted by climate change is also affecting our oceans and our sea levels. So with this being said, our sea levels are starting to rise when the temperature in the air is actually rising and is causing the glaciers to melt. But not only are the glaciers melting, our polar bear population is also dying. So, with that being said, with our oceans rising, we have been creating more floods. And the more floods, which obviously means there's going to be more damage done to towns, cities, etc. But when the oceans bring back, or like finally settle and everything goes back, it's bringing in pollution, and this is killing off our sea life, or like our oceanic life, and is creating more issues beyond the climate. Now with the climate and the water and the air temperatures are rising, our coral reefs are taking a huge hit. With this being said, our ocean life that depend on the coral reefs are also being hunted down by their predators because they have nowhere else to go. So the people who rely on these sources of ocean fish and all that are having a hard time hunting, fishing, etc. So we need to keep all of these effects that we're doing to our earth in mind, because our atmosphere actually is just a thin layer of onion skin. And when we are driving our cars, we need to remember that we are sending the exhaust fumes into the atmosphere and are creating holes into this delicate layer, which is causing all these issues on Earth. So, with our atmosphere creating holes and stuff, we also have to remember that the trees also absorb in the carbon dioxide. Now what this does is the trees essentially then become carbon bombs. And when they are set on fire, it sets everything else on fire, and it's uncontrollable for a while. With our Earth's climate patterns changing for the worse, hurricanes are starting to get worse before they hit land. We obviously we need to make awareness of this. There are so many believers and non-believers in this. And a lot of the non-believers are politicians who have been paid by these large oil companies to just say that climate change is not occurring, when obviously it is, because scientists have been doing research on this subject for years, and a lot of them have dedicated their life and to this subject, and that a lot of money goes into this. It's not cheap to do. So when we look at what scientists have done, there are so many graphs and diagrams out there. So our scientists have taken their time out of their life to put together these graphs and diagrams to show from when climate change started to become an issue to the present and how it has affected our Earth. And when one was talked about in Before the Flood, he had said that he was talking to Congress about this issue, but also when he came out with the idea of the hockey stick graph showing the effects and temperature rise and stuff, he had received death threats. Well, that soon ended up having to involve law enforcement officers, the FBI, because he felt like his safety was not okay. And having people worry that their studies and everything else is being put at risk because people who do not believe just simply don't want to believe this subject and that it is happening is ridiculous, per se. Okay? Everyone needs to start listening to this research at hand, and when we finally do start listening, we also need to think about Earth relies on us. We take care of Earth because Earth is our home. Earth is like our baby. We live and breathe and everything. Well, so to do some help with this, some ideas to switch to or like consider is the fact that you can heat your homes not only to like reduce or minimize use of propane, burn wood, or there's this thing called geothermal heating. Geothermal heating is when there is like pipes that go through the ground and water circulates through them, but then there are also systems that get put into your house. Well, they can only be put into modern day homes, otherwise it will be very expensive to put them in older homes. As it is, the cost for geothermal heating systems costs about $40,000, and I'm sure it rises from there. So with that, it also cuts your energy bill usage 70% than what it is now. Instead of driving your cars and spreading the exhaust fumes into the air, walk. Why not? You're not only helping the Earth, but you're getting good exercise. You could even bike if it's a longer distance, but still able to not be a ridiculous mileage. Like if it's just a mile, you could bike. Exercise again. Awareness can also be spread throughout our classrooms. NASA has links to websites that contain lesson plans, but they also have activities, diagrams, and everything that you can talk to and like explain throughout your class. When science marches also. Science marches are really good. You can create signs to help create and build awareness throughout your community, even on this system. So when people see your signs, they can be like, oh, I didn't realize this was even an issue. And they can help with taking a stand. And if people have questions at the end, they could possibly ask you on this subject. So there are also websites that have been taking donations from people to help rebuild our forest systems and even like clean out the oceans of the pollution that has been taken in from when flooding occurs. So take a look at those.